Okay, so basically, to explain what is the Group Muse is a platform that has been existing before the pandemic, but during the pandemic, of course, it became much more active as an online performance platform. So I've been a regular performer on Group Muse since the pandemic. I was not doing it before. I was more active, just live, was public. And since then, I've created a series. So this is actually probably the second series I create. You can subscribe to the 4 concerts at once, which is usually great because then you get also a discount. Or you can just visit each concert. You have to make a reservation for each concert, and then you can watch the performance online, evidently, directly. And also for 24 hours after you have made, if you are registered, you have access to the performance live for the next 24 hours. If you're not registered, of course, it's gone. You can only, you have to see it live if you can. But just so, anyway, that's usually the process. During the pandemic, we had a Zoom chat before and after, but now, since there are many more live performances, I believe the Zoom chat before doesn't exist. The Zoom chat exists afterwards. The performance itself takes place on YouTube, so it's high quality. And then there is a chat afterwards with the public. So we can actually join after the performance. That's the way it works. And it was a way to make people see each other despite the fact that we had this crazy pandemic going on. And so that's basically the system of how it works. So if you click on the link, you will understand everything. You will know what happens. And you also will know the program. Now, also, I understand in Lebanon, many of you may not have access to a credit cards reservation online. So I have been, for those who cannot do it at all on credit cards, sending a link to 1 or 2 of my friends in Lebanon, and they usually share it with those who cannot reserve online. But that's kind of a very, very special thing to do. And in some ways, I don't want to take too much advantage of the Group Muse people who actually just sent me the link. I could see where I was talking that I received an email, the special link for the Lebanese people, understanding the situation, and everything that's going on. I feel really bad for everyone. I hope I can come back to Lebanon one day. Well, anyway, now we can welcome to my home here in the United States, where I have a pretty old Steinway piano from 1920 on which I practice. So it's my studio. And it has been rebuilt several times. It's a nice place. It's usually pretty quiet where I am now in my music studio here, but I have to warn you, I have a dog. I have a big dog. He's my sole companion. His name is Macadamia. He's new to this home, and he's a big German Shepherd. So he's active. He doesn't like it when I'm on the phone. He hasn't yet been very, very accustomed to the things that are happening around. So we may have a bit of disruption there. I may have to take him out, but let's hope that things can go on. To talk about the music that is happening this Saturday, this link, part of why I do the Zoom today is because I can also introduce you to what I'm performing this Saturday. Well, first of all, I'll be performing a piece by Jean-Paul Hakim, not Naji Hakim. It's Lebanese, Naji Hakim, you all probably know him. But Jean-Paul is his son, and apparently he writes music. And Naji sent me his music a long time ago. It's a pretty waltz. And I start with that piece, introducing you to the music of Jean-Paul Hakim. And I do that on every one of those concerts online. I start by introducing the people, the audience, to a new composer, someone that you may not have heard of, someone who is new and living now. So this has been kind of my new trend. After doing a lot of radio programs and a lot of live classical hour show, I called finally this music series the Music Hour. And I usually enjoy, playing and talking about the music. That's one of the things I've done actively all my life, with the performance side of it too. So music-wise, the next thing I will perform, and that brings us for today program, is the Appassionata by Beethoven. So on Saturday, you'll hear the full Appassionata in a performance setting, performance studio. And we'll talk about this piece, of course, today. And then the last thing I will perform is a very famous work of the repertoire, virtuoso piece by Franz Liszt called the Mephisto Waltz. So we'll have a short little waltz at the beginning, a real true waltz to dance, and we'll have the Mephisto Waltz to finish the program. Mephisto Waltz, which is not a waltz to dance, it's a waltz to scare you because it's named after Mephisto. Scare you as in disturb you. It's a good piece by Liszt. I like it a lot. I think he was pretty inventive in that piece, and that's why I chose it. And in general about me, and unless Akram already told you, I have been specializing for the past years in the music of Brahms, and a lot has been written about my recordings of all his solo piano music. I just, during the pandemic, actually my last album of all his solo piano music has been released. And still until now, actually still until in January, I will be on the front cover of the Fanfare magazine, which is some way a big achievement and promotion-wise. I'm not sure any Lebanese pianist has ever been on the front cover of, such a magazine. Anyway, and there will be another review into the front in the magazine itself, which is appearing in January. I already had 2 reviews on the Fanfare magazine. They're all great. I cannot believe it's me. Sometimes I'm like, oh, it's detaching me. Anyway, it's a very humbling experience to see that. And there will be an interview also in that magazine. That's to tell you about what I've been doing. And you can find all of this information on my newly redesigned website by a young man who actually is in Lebanon. And he did a great job, and I'm very happy with my new website. On, of course, easy to find, pianistnada.com. You can write to me there also, mail at pianistnada.com. Very easy. We can talk about the music now, unless there are any questions about what I just talked. I know I can sometimes talk a lot and give a lot of information. If there are any questions now, I'm happy to take them. I know the question will come to you, Akram, right? If there are any questions, and then you can pass them.
Yes, directly. And also remember to send me the link of Samir Khayyat. So in case somebody asks me how they can register and pay through Samir, I can tell them.
Yeah, of course, Samir, I'll send it, yeah. So any questions? No?
Okay, no, at this stage, not.
No questions. Okay, so we will go now into talking about Ludwig van Beethoven. If I laugh about this, it's because it's funny, a few things about an artist. All my life, I performed a lot of music. And when I was at the Paris Conservatory, I performed a lot of French music. And who would have ever thought that eventually down in my, later in my life, I would be performing a lot of German music? Probably not, because at the Paris Conservatory, our training, well, of course, we played a little bit of Beethoven. I had maybe two sonatas by Beethoven, not some of the most famous ones. Probably not. You would not know this one. It's one of the early ones. And then I had another one not known either. Not very well known, but a great sonata. This is a little late. Those were the only two pieces I had by Beethoven. Can you believe it? Brahms, I never played at that time. The only piece I had by Brahms was actually a chamber music piece we performed with my trio. That's about it as far as German music was concerned. Schubert, no, I'm sorry. I played Schubert and I played Mozart a lot. And I was associated a lot with this music at the time, but of course, a lot more French.
The Austrians will be upset with you for calling them German.
Who?
The Austrians.
Schubert. Well, Mozart was very, very deep on German, He wanted to He wanted to promote German. He was very big on this. He wanted to promote German, he would call German heritage, because he's the first one at that time who wrote 2 opera in German. You know which one?
Mhm.
Of course, the Seraglio in German, and he fought to do that in German, and the Magic Flute, both opera in German, which was very, very rare. It's never heard at the time. No one wrote in German. So yeah, well, Austrian, of course, but somehow the German heritage of language, some other tradition, I'm sure. Although I have never been in Vienna, but I've been in Salzburg, the birth of Mozart. Never been to Bonn, the birth home of Mr. Beethoven, but he lived in Vienna most of his life. Beethoven is an interesting character, you know, after all this time and all this music that has been written, it's definite to everyone, it's obvious to everyone that without Beethoven, music would have been different. It's not like Mozart. Without Mozart, maybe music would still be okay, but we would have such a loss, because Mozart's music is magic. It's magic. It's incomprehensible. It's impossible to explain why Mozart's music is so perfect. But Beethoven, we can somehow look and explain. We cannot talk about Beethoven. It's rare when we can say Beethoven's music is magic, but it's definitely powerful. One thing about Beethoven's music, which is so different and somehow it breaks the pattern after Mozart, suddenly Beethoven comes and he takes you. He shakes you. You cannot, when you listen to Beethoven's music, you cannot not be attentive to what he does. It's like he grabs you by the shoulder. He says, listen to me, this is Beethoven. It's very personal in a way. When you get to the later Beethoven, his music is very personal. He's the first composer in history to come and tell you, listen to me, this is me. And it's opening the door to the Romantic era. Because what happens in the Romantic era after Beethoven is that every musician will come and say, this is me, my voice. I am Chopin. I am Liszt. I am such and such. So that's why we say Beethoven had such an impact of music history, because he did something that no one else before had done. And another thing about Beethoven, of course, he was a genius. Of course, he was incredibly something in him that was so important about music. But the circumstances of his life were also quite special. He was blessed by the gods, a little bit like Liszt. I don't know why I feel like Beethoven and Liszt, despite the fact they're completely different composers. I mean, Beethoven is a huge composer. Liszt is a great performer, very interesting composer, but we cannot compare the genius of composition. But they were both blessed by the gods. Why do I say that? Because you look at Mozart, who's the composer. Haydn, let's put Haydn on the side. Haydn had a good life. But Haydn was not Mozart or Beethoven, not as adventurous and different. But, you know, they were all about the same time. Look at the dates. Mozart dies in 1792. Beethoven is born in 1770 and dies in 1827. Schubert dies in 1828. And then when is Chopin or Liszt born? Well, right there, 1810, 1811. Schumann is born 1810. Mendelssohn 1809. It's like everything happens for a reason. It's perfectly organized, you know? We get rid of those composers, we open the door to another one, another time. And it's just amazing sometimes when things happen like that in history. So Beethoven is blessed by the gods. Why do I say that? Because he never struggled in his life to create what he needed to create. He arrives in Vienna, leaving Bonn, and then he's recognized. Immediately, Beethoven is a great improviser, a great pianist. Immediately, he's recognized as a genius. And at the time, to have a career as a musician, you have to be sponsored. You have to be, to enable that creative genius of Beethoven to flourish. Well, he had everyone right there. He had archdukes, he had contessas, he had everything that was going to enable him to be free to express what he had there and there. Which, well, in the case of Mozart, Mozart took him, I would say God took Mozart early. Why? Because Mozart was poor. Mozart just had everything, gave everything, but he didn't have what Beethoven had. This luck of being able to create whatever he wanted to. Beethoven, I don't think ever received even like a commission. He created what he wanted. That's Beethoven. And that's the era of Romanticism, because then, you talk about Chopin or Liszt, well, that's exactly what they did too. They didn't need to wait for a commission. They just composed whatever they wanted to. Anyway. Now, to come to the Appassionata a little, which was composed in 1804. It is the Opus 57 by Beethoven. The Opus 58 is the Concerto number 4 in G major. If I say that, it's because if you have ever a chance to compare the two, you will see the huge difference of moods. It's unbelievable how the G major concerto is completely different from the Appassionata. And if I'm talking about two sonatas today, the next one in a book, the next one. So if Appassionata is number 23, the number 24 is the Opus 78. Those two favorite sonata of Beethoven. Also, huge difference of atmosphere. Nothing can be more different. The Appassionata is called like that not by Beethoven, but it is definitely full of passion. And the circumstances of composition, and that's why, and consciously, Beethoven loved those two sonatas as well. The first one is definitely composed during his very stormy love for the Contessa Josephine. And I won't linger too much in this because probably composers don't like too much, to talk about their own personal affairs. But of course, Beethoven had many women around him. Of course, in his life also, he was this very famous composer at the time. So it wasn't difficult to be surrounded by the aristocracy and to have fall in love with some of those women who were already Contessa, married, whatever. So it was often impossible loves. And so the stormy affair of Beethoven of the time, this is composed during that time. I say stormy, Beethoven himself is a stormy man. That's part of his character, but this sonata is definitely stormy from the beginning to the end, with the exception of this little movement, the third movement, the middle part of that sonata. The first movement is marked Allegro assai, which is not very fast, but it sounds fast. The second movement is marked Andante, and it's a very simple theme by Beethoven. Sometimes we have a theme of variations, but they are taken from somewhere else. Very simple, almost like a kind of a prayer theme. And it has 3 variations, just simple, going all up. It's like it starts in the bottom of the keyboard, and then the last one is up, like a little bit of light. And maybe if we represent that in emotions and what the music could represent, like maybe a little ray of hope in his stormy affair. But the last movement is an allegro ma non troppo. That doesn't mean too fast again, but it's definitely, again, the storm is back and won't go anywhere. It's a descent into passion and a stormy, and this sonata really is incredible piece. not only because of the emotions that are in there, but of the way it's composed, the way it's thought of. It's definitely an incredible aspect of what Beethoven was able to do. This is one of the sonata in the middle. We have Beethoven's work in three categories: the early period, the middle period, and the late period. So this is one of those middle sonata, and that's where we get the very strong characteristic of what Beethoven's music is and what Beethoven music will and what it will give to the world, because it's, when I go through it in detail, you'll see what I'm talking about. I will talk a little bit also now about the other sonata. Now, you know, unconsciously, why Beethoven would love those two sonatas. Number one, I would think the Appassionata, he likes it because it's an amazing masterpiece, that's for sure. And also because Josephine is behind the creation of it. I mean, unconsciously, how can't you be attached as a composer to such a piece? Interestingly, it is dedicated to the husband of the sister of Josephine, the Appassionata. Now, the next sonata, the one that also he loved, is a very simple sonata in two movements, totally different in character, almost like pastoral type of character. It starts with a prayer, an adagio. That's it. And then it's going to be a melody. So this is the second sonata. I won't talk very much about it because at the end of this program, you'll have the chance to listen to the whole sonata, only short, very short sonata in two movements. And it was one of my performances on Group News. You'll be listening to one of my previous performances. This one is composed in 1809. The circumstances of composition of this one, it's dedicated to Therese von Brunswick. Therese is the sister of Josephine. We don't know, biographically speaking, we're not sure that there was any real love story between Therese and Beethoven, but it's possible. And if there was, the sonata doesn't represent any storm. It was probably peaceful, or maybe even it's a friendship. We don't know that much, but here is what we don't know and what the music can tell. It's that why they're favorite of Beethoven. There's definitely something unconsciously, an attachment to those two sonatas and how and when they were created. If anything, that second sonata maybe is a remembrance of also Josephine in many ways. So, and of course, it's a great piece of art. Simple, but absolutely a gem. It's a little diamond. And it's in the character, it's almost like a Schubert moment musical. It's so fresh. And the second movement of that sonata is full of what Beethoven had, the other side of him, a humor. So it starts as a play. So this is the fun Beethoven. This is the Beethoven who wants to go out, play, who knows, drink also, of course, in taverns in Vienna and so forth, and then brings us back to the Appassionata now. And I'm going to grab a little sip of water and I will go in detail each movement of the Appassionata. But first, if that's a good moment, if there's any questions, glad to take them.
Yeah, there was a question from Ramez Nada. Which was the magazine on whose cover you will be?
It's called the Fanfare magazine. Fanfare. It's spelled as Fanfare, Fanfare. It's one of the oldest magazine of record lovers. You can find it online. You can also go to my website and click on some of the articles. Probably should take you to the magazine itself.
Okay.
Does that, okay. Anything else? Nothing? No questions about Beethoven? Or the sonatas? No? Shall I go on?
If we start asking you questions about Beethoven, we're not going to finish. So,
I'm not sure I can answer them, and maybe
well,
he help. Anything else? No. Okay, Akram, shall I keep going?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so we'll start now with that great sonata here. The Appassionata is written in F minor. That already gives you the image. F minor is a very dark color, and my dog decided that that's a good moment to come and bother me. Macadamia, go out there. Oh yeah, the Appassionata definitely is a good moment to come. Yeah, right. Go back up. So I want to talk about the beginning a little bit because it is so genius. One of the things we talk about Beethoven often is like his music is sometimes almost simple to like stupid simple. You know what we often say about Beethoven? Oh yeah, he wrote music on the first chord and the fifth chord, and it's just so simple. Not like Mozart. Mozart is a little more around. Like, I'll give you a very simple example here. I go away a little bit of the Appassionata for 2 minutes because it's so easy to understand. The third piano concerto by Ludwig van Beethoven is written in C minor, which is a key he adored. Why? He wrote also his Fifth Symphony in C minor. Pa 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 pam, pa 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 pam. Okay, the concerto for piano starts like that. Now, this was the first chord of C minor. All those notes. Okay, we have already 4 bars in C minor on the first chord, only one chord. And then the second thing he writes is okay, that's the fifth chord. We have the next, so the same theme comes, and then what happens after the fifth chord? Guess what? First chord again. It's a simple version, but just to tell you, this is Beethoven. He comes to you straight, like he punches you. It's simple. Here it is. Mozart, and here you will see the immediate difference between the personality of Mozart and Beethoven by looking at the C minor introduction of Mozart's piano concerto. He wrote one concerto in C minor. It starts like that. First chord. It's so obvious, and I'm sure you get the message immediately how Mozart and Beethoven are different. Mozart it's not angular like Beethoven. Carré, we would say in French, is in lines. It's like we are on the first chord. But here, where do we go? And here, where do we go? It's already a question mark. It's very important to understand the music of Beethoven to see this. The Appassionata, first chord. F minor. But we start in the low register, very low. And one of the new Beethoven is an innovator, never forget that. Is that instead of having C and C at an octave, we have C and C. It's that difference. So it's already creating a different type of sound on a piano, because we have a lot of empty notes in between, and we are using unison, same notes. That's pretty straightforward. Here go. That's the opening. Whoa. This is so genius. Why? Because it's on one chord. But on one chord, we have this line that goes up. It stays pianissimo, suspense, complete suspense. And suddenly we arrive on fifth. So that's 5. We have that, we have that. And silence, which is another Beethoven characteristic. He puts you up there. He tells you, this is me. Wait a minute. This is me again. It's exactly the same thing, but he chose just the next note to tell you the same thing. That's pretty genius. And the silence, and what happens? You can expect, oh, maybe he's going somewhere. No, he brings you back to the beginning. Right? And suddenly he introduced something very strange. This rhythm. We stay on the same chord. We haven't moved anywhere. So the suspense, the music stops. That's Beethoven. Complete stop. Nothing is happening. And suddenly, so what happened here? Those chords, those lines from here, same chord. How many bars? But the music is so different and it takes you everywhere. That's the genius of Beethoven. It's an amazing piece for those reasons. And it creates such contrasting things on such simple material. So we've arrived on number 5 again. And we start very slow again, very soft, like the beginning. Surprise, I knock you out. This is Beethoven. I want to shake you, tell you no. Okay, I won't go on forever because I can talk a lot about this, but it's just to tell you the introduction and to tell you how great this piece is. You can tell already from those measures. Shortly after, we are going to have a second theme. For those who understand music, you would know the sonata is usually on the first theme, which we just heard, and on second theme, which is completely contrasted. In this particular case, Beethoven uses the same rhythm, but the character itself is completely peaceful and wonderful. I won't play it, so you can have the surprise of this later. When you listen to the sonata, then it becomes stormy again. Then let's see what would be interesting to talk about. Those chords that last forever. Yes, we have one instance in the middle of the development of this sonata where Beethoven takes that same chord again, which is the 5th, but diminished 5th. The chord he loves, he will use everywhere, in all his music. But here, in this particular case, he uses it on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 measures, the same chord that will bring us back to the beginning, because we have to come back to this eventually for that movement. We have to come back to F minor, we have to come back to that's the recapitulation. Anyway, cold in here. In the United States, we have like right now outside about like I don't know the temperature, but it's pretty cold. First movement, I think now we will talk about another movement, maybe the second one. Before I go to the second one, any questions?
I just want to say that there are no questions because what you're saying is so clear and fascinating, and we want to wait for more, and we know there's more coming. That's why there are no questions, because the interest is summum.
Good to hear. Good to hear. Okay. One thing before I leave that movement that I want to talk about, it's like this Beethoven personality that comes knock on the door, and it's so obvious. Of course, you all know, right? Who doesn't know this piece? Okay, first chord. I don't know. Again, first. But what's interesting about this ta 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 tam, pa 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 pam, often we refer at that's the knock of destiny on Beethoven's door. Well, his destiny was to become the greatest composer, one of the greatest who ever lived. But of course, he became death. You know, compared to everything else that happened in his life, I think, of course, you become death, you cannot hear. And in some ways, he was not completely deaf, although it became really, really bad at the end of his life. He could still hear. But in some ways, being a composer, you don't need to really hear because you compose everything in the head. What's interesting, though, is I want to say, you know, you heard how the sonata started, this one. You heard that. Well, it's the same, that knock on destiny, right? And he finishes the last movement with the same thing. The first movement, I'm sorry, I'm still in the first movement. Right? It's going. And then suddenly, it's surprise, soft. And then suddenly it's going to storm. Etc. Okay. Am I still on, Akram? I just want to make sure because I don't see you anymore.
You're
Hello?
fine. Go ahead. You take your time. Do what you feel like.
Okay, good. Okay. So now let's go to the second movement. The second movement is this moment of peace again. It's very simple. The theme goes as, I'll start. This is the first part of the theme, which my dog decided to interrupt. Macadamia, shoot. Stop. It's repeated. Every section of this theme is going to be repeated. So there's two sections. It's repeated. I won't do the repeat now. I'll go to the second part. So one thing that is similar in between this and the first movement, it starts in the low register, right? That's the end of the theme. The first variation stays, but it stays in the lower. It's trying to go up. Listen to that. I'll continue without the repeat. First up. Second variation. because in this one, the repeat is written. So the first time we hear the theme on the top, which is very simple, the long notes, and the second time, the repeat, we hear the theme in the bottom of the left hand. So we are here. Now the second part. Completely on the top of the piano. Now the left hand. Fortissimo. Diminuendo to the bottom of the piano. And we hear again the theme. As simple as at the beginning. But this time, a little bit up. We go up again. And guess what? There's no repeat this time. Just once. Hear the second part. The last time. And we want to hear that it finishes, yes? But not. That's Beethoven. First one ever to do something like that. He suspends, he tells you, no, it's not finished. Not only it's not finished, but I'm going to punch you in the nose. So you see the similarity to create that sonata as a one whole. It's such little things. The last movement has nothing to do with the first movement other than, oh, it's an F minor, of course, but it starts in the low register again, like the first movement. And then, of course, it goes on, it has amazing moments of fury, of power, of storm throughout. And it has also those incredible moments that I was talking about earlier, where Beethoven stays on the same chord. I'm actually going to play that part, which is in the middle of that movement, because it's so amazing. And we have the theme that is reproduced also with the left hand. So together now. So now we are on one chord. Listen to this. Silence. Silence. Listen to this. Pianissimo. Another chord. And what happens when we have that, of course? how many notes on one, how many measures? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 measures on the same chord. What happens with Beethoven when he does that? Music stops. Something stops, nothing goes anywhere. It's like this question, suspense, where are we going? This is what Beethoven was so great at, creating suspense in music. And then again, and back, and so forth. So I think this will probably be a good introduction to listening now to the Appassionata, to understand, to see all of this, to see the power that music kind of carries throughout. It's amazing. And to see why this piece is such a masterpiece in the work of Beethoven. How couldn't he love this piece? It's impossible. It's so simple, so himself, so much direct, telling you in front, look, you know, I'm upset. I don't know if that's what he says, but it definitely has a lot of that in it. It's typically an emotion Beethoven has very well represented. Some that he's tormented, that it's stormy. It's really stormy. And then, of course, when we finish this my little talk here, you will listen to the other aspect of Beethoven, the pastoral Beethoven, the one who goes in the country and loves what he sees, which is that second opus 78 we'll be listening. Of course, we know, you know, from history that he loved those two sonatas, but definitely after, when he writes the last part of his work, the third period of Beethoven, you all know that there are some great sonatas written, like the Hammerklavier, the opus 110, which is one of my favorite of the last period, the opus 111, which is an amazing piece also. And it is known that eventually he loved the Hammerklavier. It became one of his favorite sonata at the time, which is a wonderful, incredible piece, very powerful too, extremely powerful. I wouldn't say it's my favorite. It's almost like too big. It's almost like the Beethoven who wants to impress, who's like had so much innovative things in his head that he pours it in the Hammerklavier so much. A little bit like what he does in the Appassionata, by the way, but to me, the Appassionata is still reachable. It's still like human. And the Hammerklavier is more almost inhuman in its greatness. So anyway, this I think will end my talk now. We'll take some questions and then we can listen to opus 78.
Okay, any questions? No, I think
it's just one question or comment. It is amazing that Beethoven, I mean, we all know this, but still, you know, in the third part of his life where he could not really hear his music and it's all in his head.
You know, I'm going to tell you, yeah, I know, it's amazing. You know, just for it looks like it's amazing. Let me tell you, there's so many musicians out there who have a career and at the end of their life, they don't hear anymore very well, including myself. My hearing is starting to be going. We've all have, as musicians, sometimes we have like some hearing problem. As composers, you know, another great composer who is not as known maybe as Beethoven is, but Fauré also ended up being deaf at the end of his life.
Rodrigo also.
Okay, so we have other composers who became deaf at the end of their life. Of course, Beethoven, everyone knows, and it becomes like the person who is remembered as being deaf, but Fauré was completely deaf. He couldn't hear anything. He still composed amazing music at the end of his life, you know, so it's relative to what happens in someone's life. Or evidently, you would rather not lose the hearing, but and nowadays, of course, we can have help, so that helps.
Hearing aids, yeah.
But as a composer, most of the music you compose, as when you are a great composer, you probably won't need a piano. You won't need to hear it. because you hear it here. You know, and as an interpreter, at a certain level, I'll tell you a little secret. My way of learning music, I often learn away from the piano. I never put the music in front of me. So it becomes a second nature.
Thank you.
Sure.
In fact, Nada, Fauré had worse than deafness. Fauré at one time, the upper part of the piano was out of tune, it was sharp, and the lower part of the piano, it was flat. So he was listening to music, but it was 2/3 of it was out of tune.
Oui, et Madame Nada, ce que vous avez dit est valable pour les sonates, mais ce n'est pas valable pour une symphonie. Ce n'est pas valable pour un concerto. Ça devient beaucoup plus difficile. De plus, lui, à part le fait d'être sourd, il se plaignait de maux de tête. Et par moments, il devenait fou le mal le rendait fou. Ça allait beaucoup plus loin que le fait de ne pas véritablement entendre.
Oui, mais parce qu'il avait en fait une maladie. Maintenant, on sait qu'il avait une maladie. Et ça, effectivement, ça peut faire mal. Mais vous savez, il y a beaucoup d'autres compositeurs qui ont eu des maladies qui étaient terribles. Hein. Donc, c'est un peu relatif. Ce que je veux dire, c'est que, bon, il a eu une maladie de l'oreille, mais il y a d'autres compositeurs qui ont souffert de pas mal d'autres choses aussi. Je veux dire, tout est relatif dans la vie, inclus par exemple d'autres, je ne sais pas, les compositeurs qui sont aveugles. Vous imaginez, c'est terrible ça, si on devient aveugle aussi. Hein.
Oui, c'est un fait. C'est un fait. Mais les autres n'ont pas composé la 9e, ni la Missa Solemnis. C'est tout.
D'accord, mais les autres, par exemple, comme Bach, ont composé l'art de la fugue.
Oui, mais Bach n'était pas sourd.
Ah, si, il est devenu aveugle, Bach.
Aveugle, mais il avait déjà tout fait.
D'accord, oui, mais c'est quand même relatif. Je veux dire, c'est pas.
Oui, j'admets.
Oui, vous voyez, je veux dire, bon, bien sûr, Beethoven a été sourd, mais vous regardez un petit peu la vie qu'il a eue quand même. C'était un compositeur respecté. Il a eu la 9e symphonie. Il avait il a eu un succès extraordinaire avec la 9e symphonie. C'est rare, je veux dire, vous voyez, relativement parlant, des compositeurs qui sont extraordinaires, mais comme Bach. Si on n'avait pas eu Mendelssohn, on n'aurait jamais su. On n'aurait jamais appris qui Bach était, parce on a perdu tout, à part Mendelssohn qui l'a remis. Donc, il y a des choses. Pour moi, je trouve toujours qu'il y a une sorte de balance parfaite, comme si le créateur, derrière tout ça, savait exactement comment donner un peu, beaucoup, pas assez à tout le monde. Vous voyez ce que je veux dire?
Oui,
Chopin,
oui,
regardez la vie de Chopin. Bon, Chopin était malade toute sa vie, il était faible. Il n'avait pas la consistance, mais il était connu, il était adulé, il était adoré, Chopin, entouré tout le temps de monde. Liszt, lui, il a eu beaucoup de chance. Je ne sais pas comment il a fait, mais il était fort, il était beau, il était adulé, mais peut-être la seule chose que le créateur ne lui a pas donné, c'était le génie extraordinaire d'un Beethoven. Beethoven ne sera jamais oublié comme compositeur. Sans lui, tous les compositeurs après n'auraient pas existé, inclus Liszt. Il doit à Beethoven, vous comprenez? Il y a une sorte de balance extraordinaire dans le monde.
C'est vrai. Merci.
Nada, there's a question from Tarek. Go ahead, Tarek.
No.
Go ahead, Tarek.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's amazing work. So in many instances, you will see musicians or even artists in general come across some kind of life event which prompted them to compose or write a certain piece of music. What was it here with regards to the Appassionata? Was there one, or it's just the...
I talked about it early on. The Appassionata, I mean, the two events, probably unconscious but conscious, why Beethoven loved those two sonatas, they're related to two women. Josephine, behind the Appassionata, which we know had an affair, very stormy affair with her. and obviously couldn't happen, couldn't end up well because she was married. She's a countess, already engaged. That's behind the Appassionata. Behind the second one that you'll be listening to now, there's Therese von Brunswick. Who's Therese? She is the sister of Josephine. And we don't know exactly the attachment of Beethoven with Therese, but we do know he was attached to both, evidently. And both of those sonatas are dedicated to the same family. The first one is dedicated to the husband of Therese. And the second sonata, the one you listen to now, is dedicated to Therese von Brunswick. So circumstances, definitely, yes.
Interesting. And just can you remind us the age he is at? I mean, as far as his death, is it close to his deafness or?
So when he maybe let me see. I forgot exactly when his deafness starts, because the number three symphony now. I don't have the date of composition in head, but 1804 is the Appassionata, and 1809 is the second sonata you'll be listening to. So it's
okay.
The Heiligenstadt Testament was around 1802. And after that, immediately he wrote the Eroica, which was Opus 53. So it's not far from the Appassionata. At that time, he was not clinically deaf, but he was very deaf. Later on, in 1812 or 13, he was clinically deaf.
Okay. Amazing. Thanks. Thanks. Very interesting.
So Akram, if there's no any other question, maybe it's time to listen to Opus 78.
Okay. Now you're going to leave when we're listening to the sonata. So
yes,
we can say goodbye to Nada now. She has to leave. So we listen to the sonata, which is about 10 or 12 minutes. And by that time she would have left. Okay. Thank you very much, Nada. It was wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Nada.
I encourage all of you, of course, unless you have questions now, I encourage you to follow me online, go to my YouTube, subscribe, go to my concert online, and also you can write me online. There's like on my website an email. You can subscribe to my email list on the website, and you can also write me. So hopefully I'll hear from you all.
Thank you very much. We really enjoyed this.
Welcome.
Okay, we listen to the Opus 78 now, which is number 24. Let me share the screen. Again, thank you very much, Nada, and we'll see you soon.
Okay, thank you, Akram. Goodbye.
Up here in Idaho, it's
Thank you.